I guess.
Mayor is one.
He was right there in the hallway, so I was following him.
There he is.
Fashionably late.
Okay,
Fashion.
we will convene the Board of Elections at this time and ask for approval of the minutes of the meeting held on November the 8th, 2024.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any public comment on agenda items only at this time?
Chris, should I jump in and talk about where we stand procedurally before we do public
Yeah,
comments?
why don't we do that?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. The reason we're here today, just to kind of set this up, is we were canvassing provisional ballots. We had an attorney representing the State Democratic Party filed challenges against initial determinations against 11 of those ballots. So in other words, I had made an administrative determination based on, precedent law, court ruling, what have you. And they wanted to challenge that and put it in front of the Board of Elections. The reason I'm jumping in is because I did receive an email from that attorney shortly before the meeting stating they wish to withdraw the challenges. However, there were two reasons why I think we need to go forward with the meeting. One was we had to provide notice to these 11 affected voters. So there's a chance one of them might have showed up today and wanted to speak on behalf of their ballot. So we had to kind of provide for that. And then the second issue is that one of the 11 is a different fact pattern from the other 10. And I believe that it still is a fact pattern that should go to the Board of Elections for a decision, that it shouldn't just be my decision as an administrator about whether to count it or not. So that's why we're still here. And so the 10, in one sense, they're kind of off the table, because in the absence of any action by the board, if you decided you wanted to take them up anyway, the current dispensation is that they would not be counted. But we can wait and see what the public comments have to say about that. And then we could get into a little more detail about the 10, and then the 1 is separate issues. We want to keep them separate because they're different fact patterns.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on agenda items? Yes, ma'am.
Just like a little bit of explanation.
Okay.
I didn't protest it. Why did it?
Yeah,
Could you state your name, ma'am?
Morris.
Linda Morris,
okay.
I passed it down.
155 Upman Avenue. That's okay. Thank you
That's
for
okay.
being here. Thank you.
I can absolutely provide some additional information. So the 10 provisional ballots that were challenged, they're all the same fact pattern. It's a situation where the voter cast a provisional ballot out at the polling place. And there's an outer envelope that has to be completed partly by the voter, partly by the poll workers, where they indicate the circumstance. Because there's a lot of reasons why someone might cast a provisional ballot out at the polls. But there are two places on the outer envelope where the voter has to sign. There's one location where they sign under their personal information before they receive the provisional ballot. There's a second location where they sign an affidavit after they receive both the ballot. And it has to be signed in both locations. The election code is pretty clear about that. There's a state Supreme Court decision. This has been litigated in the past, and the state Supreme Court decision affirmed that it has to be signed in both places. On all of these 10 ballots, the voter had signed in the first position, but not the second position. And that was where I had made the determination, well, procedurally, we can't count these. The attorney had challenged that, objected to that. They since withdrawn it. And that's why, in the absence of, a voter here wanting to speak on behalf of their ballot, or the board taking action to open the issue up, currently those ballots would not be counted in the absence of a challenge. And I should say then the 11th ballot we'll get to as well. That's a different fact pattern where we have potentially a violation of the election code. We don't know, but it was a circumstance that I reported to the district attorney. But then there's a related question about whether a provisional ballot should count or not. I can get into that later.
These provisional ballots are conducted at the polls?
Yes, so a provisional ballot, they were created under HAVA in 2004. But a voter always has the right under that federal law to vote a provisional ballot. There's no guarantee it's going to count. But what it does is it preserves their potential right to vote until after the election, when there is more time for a county board of elections to review the circumstances, investigate the circumstances, and then be able to make a determination about whether it would count. So for instance, the poll workers might say, well, we can't find you in the poll book. Well, it's a long day for the poll workers. Sometimes they miss them in the poll book, or maybe they're under a maiden name and that doesn't come out in the conversation. We find them after the election and we can count it. Or maybe they vote in the wrong precinct, or maybe they're just not registered anywhere at all, or they're registered in another county, but they still voted a provisional. We have to research all of that, those circumstances, gather the information, and make it then a determination about whether that provisional can count.
So all 10 of those, they have to sign off both lines according to what state law says,
Correct.
and the Supreme Court upheld that.
Yes.
However, like when you go in to vote, they have you sign the polling booth. Vote,
Yes.
Make sure it's you.
Yes.
And what a poll worker say to them, listen, you have to sign both spots
Yes.
count?
Yeah.
So
There's
if 10 people didn't sign it, even if they were notified, they didn't sign both spots?
there's a series of steps that need to be followed, between the poll workers and the voter, 1, 2, 3, they need to follow those steps exactly and issue a provisional. And we had, I want to say it was about 350 provisionals issued in this election between all the precincts. And in those 10 cases, regrettably, the voter didn't sign both places.
But they would have been notified by the poll worker, correct?
Or the poll worker or the voter missed it. It's just
Okay.
like cases where the poll workers are supposed to have the voter sign the poll book, and sometimes they get to talking that day, they get distracted, and then the voter walks right on and doesn't sign it. And then we have to try to find those cases afterward. Unfortunately, there's always going to be some cases like that where there's human error during the day. And this is a procedural issue you can run into with a provisional, just like if they don't use the secrecy envelope. There's a secrecy envelope the provisional has to be in. And if the secrecy envelope isn't used, then it can't be counted. And we train on all this, but you're never going to get 100%.
Yes, Karen.
So since I'm here, I'm just gonna go ahead and say I'm here on behalf of the McCormick campaign.
Did you want to come up?
Yeah, if I could, yeah.
Yep.
I should probably just reserve it. So I'm Karen DeSalvo. I'm here on behalf of the McCormick campaign, and we agree with the initial determination of the board on these 10 ballots. I also want to additionally say, though, 2 of them were also unregistered, so that also provides an additional basis for rejecting these provisional ballots and counting them. And the law is very clear. Counties are statutorily barred from counting provisional ballots if the signature does not appear in both places on the ballot.
I have a stupid question. It doesn't have to do with this. If someone's registered in the wrong county, or not the wrong county, in a different county,
Yeah.
and they go, does their whole ballot get thrown out, or does the statewide stuff still go?
You mean
through?
if they cast a provisional in a different
Yeah.
county? No, it doesn't count. Provisional ballots cannot count across county lines. It would be administratively unworkable to do that because they're not even a registered voter in this county. So how do you update their vote history? You would have at that point a free for all where people are just casting votes all over the Commonwealth, and there's no way to referee that or track it. So currently, those do not count across county lines. If we find and there are always a couple cases. If you find someone who's registered in a different county, that's treated the same as if they're not registered at all. It can't count. And there are cases that will come up like that, even at the polls on election day, where we'll look them up. We find they're registered in another county, and you tell them on the phone, hey, you've got to go to the county where you're registered. We cannot on election day deny them a provisional. If they insist on casting it, we have to let them. But usually between us and the poll workers, we try to let them know, look, federal law says you can cast this provisional, but you really shouldn't because it's not going to count. You need to go down to Northumberland or Union or wherever it is you're still in the poll book in order to cast a vote that will count on election day.
I know that doesn't have anything to do with this, but I was just curious.
So of
Right.
course, you mentioned the 11th one. What's the,
Well, before we get to that, I think I wanted to add, Chris, should we see if there's any voters here? Are there any voters here that we contacted who wanted to talk about their ballot? Yeah. Did you want to come up or do you just want to talk from there or?
Pam, can you please state your name? Thank you for attending. Yeah.
So someone called me yesterday about my vote.
Uh-huh.
I was supposed to sign, but I didn't. So
Right, you spoke to me on the phone, and you were one of 10 voters, I think, as we discussed on the phone, where there were two places to sign on the envelope, and there was only a signature in one of those positions, and that based on that, it's not possible to count the provisional ballot under the state election code under a state Supreme Court decision, but we were giving you the opportunity if you wanted to attend and if you wanted to speak and address the board about your ballot, if you want them to take up the question or not about whether it should count. The person who filed the challenge did withdraw the challenge, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm sorry about that. If you don't want to stand up here, that's okay. But you are here and your ballot was is one of those issues that was before the board. And if you have anything to say, I want you to absolutely have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, feel free to come up, ma'am, if you'd like to.
so I don't know exactly what to say, but um, it was my mistake. I was supposed to sign and then I missed one signature. So I'm sorry for that. I don't know exactly what to say, but so if my vote can count, that would be fine for me. Grateful. As a citizen, my vote can count. That's all.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
And I want to say too, that I am sorry that this happened to you because we train our poll workers every year. We have to train them on a lot of things. There's a lot of things they have to do out at the polls. It has to do with the voting equipment and people signing the poll books and issuing provisional ballots. And sometimes they do make mistakes. And unfortunately, that can sometimes impact someone's ballot. And I regret that. We can always try to do better. This is an issue that I talk about a lot in training with the poll workers because it has the potential to impact whether a ballot counts or not. So it's absolutely going to come up in training next year. It comes up every year, but it's important to remind them that there can be pretty significant consequences like this if they don't follow those steps one after the other to make sure that at least procedurally every provisional ballot is issued correctly. Sometimes we always have to set some aside based on the facts of their registration or what have you, but it pains me when one of them has to be set aside because of a procedural error like this. I don't like it. Personally, I don't agree with it. I'll even say that. But the law is what it is. The court said what they said. And so what I think doesn't matter. So I guess the question right now is, does the board want to do anything with this issue or do we want to talk about the 11th ballot?
I think since it was dropped, there's really nothing for us to do as a board.
Okay. All right.
Ma'am, we're sorry this happened to you, and we hope it doesn't discourage you from voting in the future. Because your vote is so important, like everybody else's. So thank you for being here and taking part in the voting process. it's your right. We're glad that you exercise it. Yeah, thank you.
The 11th ballot is a little different. I believe it is still a matter that should go before the board. But what happened in that case, I made an initial determination about it that I was inclined to go this direction. And the same attorney for the Democratic State Committee challenged that determination. And I think after further reflection on it, it is the right thing to do to put it in front of the board. So the fact pattern here, and I've got to be careful because I did report the situation to the DA. So don't want to name the voter or any circumstances like that. But we had a situation at a precinct where we have a parent and they had an adult child. And the child showed up at the polling place, signed in the poll book in the position of the parent. And based on the information we have available, the child is not a registered voter. So the child signed, received a ballot, voted a ballot. Later in the day, the parent appeared at the polling place who is a registered voter. It's their name in the poll book. The poll workers saw that and issued the parent a provisional ballot, which they cast, and which is the ballot we're talking about here. So the issue before the board is whether or not to count this provisional ballot. But it is obviously entangled with the issue that there's a potential violation of the election code if an unregistered person signed in that voter's place and already cast a ballot at that polling place that day. Now, I took this whole situation and I forwarded it to the district attorney's office. So it is an investigation that they're conducting. I did also speak with the judge of elections for the precinct after this incident happened. I wanted to hear from them what they recalled about the circumstances there when this happened, when first the child appeared and then later the parent appeared. The way the judge of elections related to me is that when the parent appeared at the polling place and the poll workers saw what had happened and the parents saw what had happened, the judge relayed to me that the parent's reaction appeared to be genuine surprise and upset. And the parent was heard to have said something along the lines of, they should not have signed in my place. So, that's all I've been able to learn. I haven't heard anything else from the district attorney's office about this. To me, the question on which the decision would hinge is, to what extent do you believe the potential violation of the election code and the provisional ballot are connected? The attorney who challenged the ballot alleged maybe there was collusion between the parent and the child. If there's a belief that there was some kind of coordination, then that would obviously, impact the provisional and mitigate against wanting to count it. However, if the board believes that the two incidents really are separate and that the parent didn't have knowledge that this happened, in that case, you have a potential violation of the election code, yes, but also a registered voter who cast a provisional ballot who arguably their right to vote should not be impacted by what the other person did.
The parent did state that the adult child did not have permission to come there.
No, yes.
Yeah.
I was there.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
yes.
Well, so, I mean, I think you can absolutely, but I just wanted to say that's what I think the decision is going to hinge on.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Could you please state your name?
Daphne, legal voters president, and I live at 2825 4 Mile Drive.
Did you want to come up here? Okay. And
It's okay.
just going from what I said up front, please try to avoid any mention of the polling place or names or anything like
I don't
that.
know, I don't know
Just
the
because
names.
it's an investigation.
Okay. So I was acting as a poll monitor when the mother came. And I didn't hear the initial when they said, oh, your daughter signed, but then there was much discussion. That judge of elections worked very hard in the 4 hours I was there with so many people confused, voters. So what had happened is the mother was very emphatic that for the last 3 years, she has tried to get her daughter, help her daughter get registered. They have a very similar first name, which I can't remember. Like it's 2 letters off. It's a long first name, and they have a hyphenated last name, both of them. So their names are very similar. Her daughter sincerely thought she was registered, as her mother had even visited voter services to get it fixed. Like for 3 years, she was emphatic about that. And then the judge of elections said that she could do a provisional and that they were going to look up the daughter's vote and strike it off. And the mother knew that, agreed with that, and said that she shouldn't, that she thought she was registered in good faith, and that I personally did not get the impression that any fraud was intended. So that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for,
I had a lot of sympathy for the judge of elections in those 4 hours.
thank you for being here.
Well, I thank you for the words about the judge too, because it's not easy being a poll worker at all, but it's definitely not easy being the judge where you have to make all those decisions all day long. And, and everybody's looking at what you're doing.
There's 4 hours, you cannot believe the people, it was embarrassing for them, but just fighting. They came in to register to vote. They didn't know their polling place. People had moved and not informed voter services. Like people were just very confused. They really were.
Yeah. I don't know if there are any other, should we take other comments about it right
Yeah,
now?
anybody,
If anybody has it.
any comments? Anybody else?
But,
Talking about it now. Is that 2 different cases?
well, she was commenting on the circumstance I was describing. I was kind of keeping it gender neutral, but yeah, we're talking about a parent and an adult child with sounds like similar names.
Both are registered.
No, that's part of what underpins this. If they were both registered voters, we wouldn't be here, because it's actually pretty common to have circumstances where you have like a senior or junior and one might sign in the wrong spot during the day. I think we had that happen once on election day. They've got the same exact name. They're in the same precinct. Son signs for the father or vice versa. And the poll workers always will make a note to say, hey, son signed in the dad's spot, dad signed in the son's spot, and we work it out. But this is a different circumstance because the adult child was not a registered voter.
Any online?
Before it's the child's vote was pulled.
No, once a ballot is put through the scanner like that, they're all mixed together. They can't be
Right, but
separated.
we're not accepting that vote. That vote is.
Well, the problem is that it's in there. It can't be pulled back out and identified. There's no voting system we would be allowed to use in the Commonwealth that it would let you find an individual ballot cast by an individual voter. So when someone's out at the polling place, they get that ballot to vote. There's nothing to identify it. They put it through the ballot scanner and it goes into a black bag that's attached to the back, and they're all in there. So when something like this happens, there's no way to go back and find it. It's in there. It's a voted ballot cast at the precinct. And that's why, knowing what we knew, I had to refer the matter to the district attorney.
And the provisional, you have marked that as not valid.
The provisional ballot, I have it. Nothing's been done with it. It just as nothing's been done with the other 10 ballots that were challenged. They stay sealed inside the envelopes, preserving the situation until the board was to make any determination one way or the other about it. So right now, that provisional has not been counted. If the board made a decision about it, then I would count it, or if it decided not to, well, then it would stay sealed. Nothing would happen.
I'm not sure if this is the right verbiage. The solicitor wants to correct me, but so your testimony to us is you don't feel that provisional.
I don't think I actually made a recommendation as of yet. I mean, if you're asking my inclination, my recommendation would be to count it. And the reason for that is based on my conversation with the judge. I mean, I wasn't aware of the other information we heard, but just based on my conversation with the judge, it doesn't sound to me as if the registered voter, the parent, was aware of what had happened. And to me, the question of whether you count this provisional or not depends entirely on that, because if they had a child who did something, and I say child just in the sense of the relationship, they're an adult, they did what they did. But to me, I don't believe it should impact the mothers, the parents. But yeah, the fact that they're a registered voter, they cast a provisional, they didn't know what happened. It's not their fault what happened. Based on that, my recommendation would be to count. But I can understand where there's an opposite argument that could be made potentially. That's why this is an issue that the board has to consider. And
this too is not currently challenged by anybody. It's just,
there's not currently an active challenge, no. However, when you have a situation like this, it's possible I would have thrown this to you guys anyway. That it was very early in our determinations about these ballots, but it was likely I was going to make the call to the judge that I did anyway. I was going to look into this more. I would have had to send it to the DA. And ultimately, even without the challenge, I probably would have put it before you to make the decision. The other thing is that currently, factoring in all the ballots that we've counted in this election, including the last of our UOCAVA and provisionals that may not yet be reflected online, but will be, our ballots cast in the election are currently 59,999. So if you were to count this ballot, it would put us at an even 60,000.
Would that make you happy?
I'm just pointing out the interesting consequences.
It almost looks too artificial. That it's like.
I actually, I know it's a little flippant, but I really couldn't resist bringing that up.
I mean, my gut would be that the registered voter didn't necessarily do anything wrong.
And that's-
and the whole debate comes to the unregistered voter. And was it innocent? Did you really think that she was registered? Or was it malicious? But either way, like, that's the question. The question isn't, you're a registered voter, no one, just because someone else, whether it's a relative or no one, a stranger, they shouldn't be able to take away your right to vote
And
because they signed in your name.
And that's the separation I think we have here. You've got on the one hand, someone who cast a ballot either knowing or unknowingly, that they weren't registered. And that's a question the DA is going to have to determine in an investigation and take appropriate steps if they believe it's warranted. Then on the other hand, you have a registered voter cast a provisional ballot, as far as we know, not knowing that other thing had happened. And so that's what's under the board's control today, or authority today.
Can I just make one comment?
Yeah.
I know this is not an issue for the board, but this is where voter ID might be nice.
First, are the charges going to be charges against the?
I don't, that's why I'm not an attorney, and I'm definitely not the DA. So I would not even attempt to speculate on, an investigation that really falls under his office. And, what do they learn? What do they decide? That's up to the district attorney.
Yeah, absolutely.
I must have misunderstood what the judge of elections was telling me there. Like, when you go in and they say a number, I guess I thought that number got recorded, so they would have known what number the daughter was.
Well, they do. So they announce a number, and that's the number that they are in the numbered list of voters. So the yellow books where they write things in, and then that number gets carried over into the poll book to correspond to when they.
Not the ballot.
No, not on the ballot. No, we wouldn't put any identification on the ballot.
Thank you.
Yep.
No, like I'm no district attorney either, but I don't, the mother wouldn't be able to be charged with anything. But the daughter, if there was anyone, it would have been the daughter.
So, I mean, the issue is before the board. I didn't say it'd be easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mother's ballot should be counted because the mother didn't do anything wrong.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the provisional ballot be counted.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 That is everything I have. I'll just make one quick announcement, which is, as you're probably aware, we are doing a statewide recount for the office of United States Senator. The Secretary of the Commonwealth made that announcement yesterday.
Time or date yet? Okay.
Yes, yeah, it'll be next Wednesday, the 20th. We'll start at 9 a.m. And we're in the process of getting notice out to everybody who needs it. One thing we're waiting on from the state is contact information for the candidates. But once we have that, we'll be able to provide it.
And where will that be held at first?
We'll do it on the first floor of the bank where we pre-canvass the mail ballots. Interestingly, I was just informed earlier today that I guess the Salvation Army is gonna already have that area set up with the holiday display. So yeah, we're gonna be doing our recount in and among a bunch of fake Christmas trees.
Where your Santa hat?
You can't make this
Wait,
stuff
wait, wait.
up.
What makes it fake?
Is it
Yeah.
respect?
Yeah,
Why is
yeah,
it a
down on
fake
the,
Christmas tree?
down on the first floor where we did the mail ballots, but
It's not a fake Christmas tree.
it sounds like we're gonna move those up toward the front so we have room to work.
So does that make it a fake football field if they have artificial? No, it's a still a
All right.
football.
Well, maybe they're real. I don't know. I seem to remember them being.
No, they're all artificial.
Okay. But that's the plan. I'm hopeful that we can do it in one day, although it'll be a long day because the other recounts we did for Commonwealth Court and the Oz McCormick Senate McCormick, what? So it's, but when we did that Senate primary, they were both about 24,000 ballots. This is 60,000,
What is the rule? How close is it? That it's a mandatory recount?
0.5%.
0.5.
Now, if Senator Casey would concede, would that recount go away?
Yeah, a candidate does have the ability to waive a recount if they wish, and that has happened in the past. I think we had, if you want to call it a close call or two, in the past where a candidate waived. That didn't happen this time, and the state has to make the decision based on unofficial returns that counties filed on Tuesday. So what's the state of things Tuesday at 5 p.m. based on the unofficial returns? They're looking at what we all told them as far as what we've counted. And then we also tell them what we have uncounted that may yet be counted. So you're defining what is the universe of uncounted ballots that's still out there. And the state then has to crunch all those numbers and decide if a recount's necessary. But really the 0.5% makes it automatic.
Hey, I think you said this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so Wednesday, November 20th,
Yes.
9 a.m.,
Yes.
first floor of the
Yep.
Third Street Plaza.
And thankfully, we've already got the staffing 99% worked out. It's great that we had departments already volunteering people, and we don't need as many people for a recount as we do for election day. You know, we needed about 8 or 10 people to come in and help out, plus people from IT. But we're already where we need to be, and I'm very thankful to all the departments that are giving us help with that.
And you probably said this, but just for clarification. So we made a motion to count the provisional ballot, the illegal ballot or whatever you want to call it. That has been removed, correct?
That was withdrawn.
Withdrawn. Okay.
It's the ballot itself cannot be recovered. It's not possible to find a ballot that was cast and put through a scanner on election day because they're all mixed together.
Correct.
So it is in there, you know, it's part of the count, and that's why as a suspicious circumstance, as a potential violation of the election code, it's going to be up to the district attorney to look into that because I can't unwind that once a ballot's counted, voted through the scanner in the bag. So the vote to count the provisional is honoring the parents' right to vote as a registered voter who through no fault of their own lost their ability to sign.
So the other vote got through and the other vote got counted and it's just
Yeah,
lost in
it's
this.
part of the count, you
Okay.
know, and that's why that issue needs to be
All
investigated and
Yeah,
resolved
okay.
by the district attorney.
Thank you for explaining.
Any other, I guess if there's any public comment in general or anything else from the board members?
I believe so. We've completed our agenda then.
Right.
And so we'll be adjourned. So thank you for
Thank you.
attending. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.